I hate that we couldn't work out on our schedules. Everything's been so crazy, but the folks have already seen the season 5 premiere episode on Earthquake John Tenta, and boy, and that was such a sad story again because he was such a nice guy, and Brian and I are going to be discussing more. It's at some point. I don't know where we are in time here, but this was one of the examples of a kinder, gentler, dark side of the ring. Because even though this was a sad story, it was about a swell guy, as they used to say, and it had a lot of uplifting principle to it. He was not his own worst enemy, as some of your subjects are. So that had to be kind of a more what's the word I'm searching for? A more cathartic episode to do to have some good
Yeah.
feelings come out.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I was a big Earthquake fan. I was a fan of all the big men of the 80s wrestling when I was a kid. Bam Bam Bigelow, the Natural Disasters, et cetera, et cetera. But this was definitely a subject I never really thought would be a fit for the show or considered until recently when we were kind of doing a thought experiment on other types of different episodes. Could we sort of expand what the scope of what we're looking at for the series? And when we kind of were like, whoa, what about John Tenta? And I remembered a friend of mine, Mike Lawrence, he's a comedian and he's also a comedy writer. He suggested it to me and gave me this backstory on John Tenta that I didn't really know. I didn't know. I mean, I knew he was a sumo wrestler in Japan, but I didn't know to the extent. And just this kind of fascinating background in which how he came into the wrestling business. And he intimated that there was kind of a very emotional family story there. And I remember when we sort of, as a thought experiment, we're like, okay, what does this look like? And we started to reach out to his family and speak to them. We just kind of fell in love with them, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
They're just such likable, amazing people, and they are the heroes of this episode. And that just really resonated with us in just a huge way. The fact that, he is this, John Tenta was a gentle giant. He had that side to him, but he also was this, monstrous heel, in the 80s WWF. So there's that contrast. But in all honesty, it was just kind of really just loving the hell out of his family and just wanting to do this episode. They were very excited about it. And I thought it was just a chance for us just to give for fans to see a different side of him. Maybe they didn't know his real story or what a great guy he was. And I think it was like 10 or so years ago when his son posted this amazing photo on social media of John Tenta laying on his couch with his kids playing Game Boy. And that just really hit home for me. Like, wow, like that says everything. What a great dude,
Well,
And so
his like you said, his family, his wife and his daughter was so cheerful, and his sons, they're like central casting for normal people that you just like because they're camera friendly, even though they're normal.
mhm.
And they were just so pleasant. And I knew, most of John's background, and especially in the mid '80s when we were all able to finally get the Japanese videotapes in the mail and blah blah blah, and had seen him before he became Earthquake and knew the sumo background
Mhm.
also.
Mhm.
But the thing that I was astonished, I never realized I'm older than he was.
Yeah.
I get because he's like Dennis Condrey. People say Dennis Condrey looked like he was 40 since he was 20. But
Yeah.
I get because of he went bald prematurely, and just
Mhm.
he was big and had that you would have thought that but he was only what, 24 years old, whatever, 25 or whatever, when he's working with Hogan.
Mhm.
It was
It's
just
insane.
amazing.
Insane, yeah. Like that's definitely that era of wrestler is something, man, I really miss, to be quite frank. It's wrestlers who just looked and were, looked many years older than they actually are.
Look
I
like
don't know how else to put it that
look
way,
like
but it's
grown
just,
adults even when they weren't grown adults. Well, and the thing,
yeah.
also it's a tribute to his athletic ability. And of course he had, played sports in school, but when he debuted in
Mhm.
Japan until the time that he was working on top in the WWF wasn't 2 or 3 years. And for a guy that size to be able to, like Yokozuna, what an amazing natural athlete for a guy that
Mm,
size to be able to move it in a controlled way to not
mhm.
kill people in that fashion. There was amazing natural inclination toward being able to learn how to work at that stage of the game. But
Yeah, and one last thing too I forgot to mention about it was when we did the episode, like I said, we did it out of just, you know, being so enamored with Tenta's family. But when we did the interviews and they came back and we're watching it, we're piecing together the episode, we're like, holy crap, this is one of the most heartbreaking episodes we've ever put together. Who would have thunk it? You know?
yeah,
And you know, I just, you know, a lot of people may think it's not quite a fit for the show, but I have to say that I think it's pretty dark, you know, when someone who's so beloved and does so and has such a strong connection with their family is taken away from them. I almost can't even think of anything darker, you know. And so, you know, but it does also shine a light on the fact that, you know, what a great person he was, and it is sad to think about that nobody, you know, from the business was there, you know, in his final days, and the fact that after his wrestling career faded, he had to work retail and things like that. You know, those are things I didn't know.
yeah.
So
Well, I did not know that as well. That it got to
yeah,
that point where he not only was working retail, but he had another job doing, what was it?
a
I'm
truck
trying to
driver.
truck
Yeah,
drive. Can you imagine?
no,
Sitting there at the grocery and a truck pulls up with the produce and it's earthquake driving it.
yeah, it's wild.
But
Yeah,
but yeah, and that's also with a show like this or a topic subject like this, it's a way for you to actually tell the story of somebody that deserves to have their story told while still fitting
right.
in some, aspect with your motif. Because with a lot of the episodes, and we'll get to those here in 1 second, it's there's always some element of, yes, this is tragic, but boy, so and so brought it on themselves. But
Hmm.
but this was not the case here. But
Hmm.